Let's talk a little bit about how I use Obsidian to write special reports and articles. I'm the author of Establishing Instant Credibility, which is a book that shows you how, within a specific audience, you can create a constructive and credible interaction that demonstrates your authority in a marketplace. And it does have to do with writing content. And so I have a methodology for creating content that is relevant to your subject matter expertise. So this is not about writing a book or anything. This is simply about using your notes, your second brain, to extract key ideas and concepts that you are an expert at because of your career experience, because of subject matter expertise, and then ultimately putting that in front of specific people. So you might be asking, well, how do I do that? And so I will show you my specific method. Now, my mindset, by the way, I'm Justin Hitt, and I'm a publisher. Our website is www.jwhco.com. But here's the thing. I have been writing for years articles, newsletters, guest posts. I've been featured in publications. I've been interviewed, but I didn't start out that way. I started out in elementary school writing a book, not writing a book, but writing a book report on the Punic Wars. And then I'm kind of lazy. So what I did is the next time I had to do a book report on that particular time period, whether it's the Trojan War or the Punic War or Revolutionary War, I just simply took my old report because I have piles of papers everywhere. I just took the old report, I pulled it out of the file cabinet. And yes, I did have a file cabinet as a kid. And I basically just rewrote the report. Went out and got new research, went out and got new information. Sometimes I even had the index cards together that we used to do the original report, and then I rewrote it at the new level I was. So the key thing about a note-taking system is it allows you to capture notes and information as you are, and then build upon that over time. So what I like about Obsidian in particular, but you can get this in Notion, you can get this in a bunch of text files on the hard drive, because that's what I used to do. But the key thing is it's very simple. It's plain text. So what you see on the screen here are some notes about property rights. And I'm going to show you how I store information about headlines that are tested, because I do test my headlines when I publish content. So maybe you start out as somebody who writes for a blog or who writes for a newsletter or who has notes that you summarize in essays through like a journaling approach. Doesn't matter. It all goes in Obsidian. My Obsidian library is more than 23 years of articles and materials. It's 24,000 files, but that's just simply 1,000 files a year. And if you're taking 5 or 6 pieces of notes and you're writing atomic notes, you can see my little Zettelkasten folder. It doesn't have very much in it because I tend to search more than I tend to group stuff up. But my point being is if you have 5 notes that become part of an essay, that's very easy to end up with a lot of records. Now, I'm not going to show you my map right now because that takes a little while to load, but the back end of my Obsidian is VS Code. And so I want to show you something very interesting is that you can actually edit your Obsidian materials in VS Code or in a text editor or in a markdown, what you see, what you get tool. It's so flexible. It's so flexible. Back in the day when I used WordPerfect, and yes, I'm old enough to use WordPerfect, I had it in the WordPerfect format. Then when I used Word, it was in the Word format. And then I decided to use rich text formatting because that's what the Navy figured out to use to have a common text format. But then even then it wasn't consistent and it was still a little bit complex. Then I went to LaTeX, and then it just, long story short, Markdown is so simple, easy to use. So I can have over here in a different application, and I use VS Code because I save all my files into GitHub. Okay, so I do write some code, and I use GitHub on the back end with my publisher. But here's the deal: I can go in there and write notes, structured text, notes, front matter, all those details, get them located into one place, which is my repository. Upload that repository into GitHub, and then on the front end, I can run Python, I can run search and replace tools, I can run additional code modules in here. So I use Juniper for some things, not necessarily in my not necessarily inside my Obsidian vault, but I can use Juniper to look at my vault as a source. And so what I'm doing here is I'm capturing all of my notes and insights about activities in one place. So this specific example, let's talk about this here. This is a blog that I have called prosperityhomestead.org. And again, if you're writing an article a day, 2 articles a week, you'll get to the volume of articles that you need to create a report or a book. But where do those articles go? Well, the biggest problem I see people do is what's called productivity porn. Is you're going to learn about how to use Obsidian, you're going to learn how to do better note taking, you're going to take some notes, and then they just live in the repository. My mentality as a publisher, as a consultant, as a knowledge worker is to take what's in my notes and transform it into something that helps create value for my customers. So if I'm doing a commissioned research report, I'm going to collect all my notes in Obsidian. I'm going to use past references. I'm going to cite my materials, and then I'm going to write the report. I don't throw away all those notes. I keep those notes in the platform so I can build upon them. But if I don't publish that commissioned report, then I don't get paid. So if you're writing a paper for your dissertation, which I've written a number of dissertations for other people. I used to get paid to write dissertations for busy executives. If you're writing a report for work, a risk management report, a report of findings, if you're writing a paper for school, your success is not the writing of the thing. Your success is the publishing of the thing to an audience that's accepting and willing and open to receive it. So here's the big issue here is if we're taking notes, these notes have got to be functional. And so here's one example of the functionality. So I publish my materials on the, well, typing and speaking at the same time don't always work. I publish my materials on a blog that serves a specific audience. There's a subscription there, and so my subscribers are expecting a certain amount of content. In order to improve engagement, I use headline testing. Now I'm migrating off of this headline optimizer to use a different tool, but essentially I need to capture what I've learned about which headlines work and which headlines don't, and put that somewhere so that I know basically, what I've learned. Because you can't have a second brain full of scattered notes. You need a second brain full of knowledge. So what we have here is headlines that have worked. The original control headline is right here. Do you have the right to grow your own food on? I need to note that in my system somewhere that is the control. So what I have here is an inventory of headlines associated with a tag. Now I use folders that are the same as the tag. You can see up here my folders because we just reveal in a file navigation. I use these tags to represent clusters of content that have been published. So if I'm going to use a source reference, and we don't have to get into the details, but if I'm going to use a source reference, this code here is the source, and it's consistently mapped throughout all my content. And so if I was going to search for other content related to this content, I could just search by my tag, and all my tags reference together. I also can come down here and I can say C, and then based on the keyword concept, which is private property, I can then find related content. Now, I don't have any on private property, but do I have grow food? Yes, so I have grow food and community. And now this association, I try to do at least 3 of these. This association is starting to build that content cluster. Now, of course, I don't want to reference my own document, so I have to be able to look up the top of the screen. I don't know why I'm pointing here in order to pick that. But here you go. Here's another one here. When to grow food, hard times. I'm now contextually referencing these headlines that are tested, as well as capturing the key elements of the headlines and putting them in my repository so I get the best and greatest use out of every bit of content. So let's see what else we've learned. So I do track minimal information. So I track that this is the control. And then I want to see which headline was best. So looking at this, I see that this headline, what the government is changing about property rights. Now that doesn't have to do anything with growing food, but it got people's attention. It got me a 47% improvement in engagement. It has an 84% chance of beating the original. So that is now my tested headline, what I would call a winner. So we're going to copy and paste up here and say winner. And I'm going to say down here, what rate. Now I like to have 100% or better in its improvement. Okay, so what I've done here is I'm going to ignore this last headline. Why you cannot count on your right to farm these days. Now it says, according to this test, it has a negative percentage improvement as far as engagement rate is concerned, but it does have some engagement and it does have some rate of improvement over top of the main test. So I have to think about my statistical accuracy here. This particular test didn't have enough samples in order to pick a winner. So I'm not going to delete it from here, but I'm going to, again, keep it down here in my inventory. Now, why is this important? First off, Obsidian gives me a number of tools to have structured tests and ultimately work faster and more effectively. So I'm going to highlight all these. I'm going to come over here. I want all these title cased. And now I'm just follow along with me. I'm not teaching so much as showing. And so now I title cased everything because these are headlines. I like to title case my headlines. And then I want to clean up my formatting a little better. So I'm going to open in the system default app. And this is to show you how accessible and how flexible Obsidian can be. I do find that there are other tools that can do what Obsidian does, but this one's super flexible. And as you can see, I just formatted the document. What makes Obsidian flexible is that it can read plain text markup documents. Now, these aren't actual markup documents because they've got this this YAML header in it, but I now have a document that has context. I can read it with Python. I can read it with a bunch of different tools. I can read it with Obsidian. I can read it with other library tools without modifying the files. And I'm able to, as you can see, I just did a quick format and it formatted automatically in Obsidian. I love that Obsidian saves the document all the time. Now I can actually see what my changes were now that's a new document, but I can see what my changes were where I pulled stuff out of another document. I can move files around. I can do everything I need to do the work. But what's very, very powerful, and now I'll show you here, is that this little sidebar tells me what other documents reference it. It also tells me down here, here's a graph. Now this graph shows me some of the relationships between topics. So if I was going to write more headlines, I can just break line space here, and I can start now thinking about headlines. I can start thinking, okay, this is related to personal property rights. This is related to, and I'll show you up here, personal property rights. Growing food is probably a better keyword than just grow food. Growing food or regional food. And so I would say, since I know now that the government government and property rights is kind of a connection here, I might say, why doesn't the government want you to grow your own food? Okay. Or now reasons, shocking reasons why. Shocking reasons. What changes in property rights impact? So now I could structure this a little bit better. Now remember, Markdown is a structured text. I could have headline, and then I could have 3 pounds here to make winners, kind of a subhead. And you can see that in the outline setup here. I don't necessarily do that. Maybe I'll do that later when I have more winners. But right now I'm just using a simple layout. But if I ever did change that, I could bulk search and replace in all these text files. The key is what I'm able to do very, very quickly is I can start getting the content in place for future tests. So if I'm going to write an article about property rights and the importance of growing your own food, or the right to farm states benefits to property rights, I can go in here and say, okay, well, what's some ideas that I want to work with? let's see, if I want to, and let me just change this back to title case. There we go. If I want to write an article, what article am I going to write? Okay, shocking reasons the government doesn't want you to grow your own food. Well, I'm going to look and see, maybe the government doesn't want you to grow your own food because you'll be more independent and you'll be in a stronger community, and now you don't need the federal government. So I'm not storing everything inside of Obsidian. I'm using Obsidian for writing prompts to help me organize ideas to ultimately create either a report or a book or an article that I then test in front of an audience. I use it for lead generation. I build my list and I create more content. So I had related this to an article about food in the community. I'm going to open it in a new tab. And now you can see that this article is not formatted the way I need it to be formatted. So we go from testing an idea. So we go from capturing information we know about successful headlines, okay, what the government is changing about property rights, to a note from 2014 about the importance of food in your community. Now, this was likely published before, and you can see it's got references in it. It's got college stuff. It's got it looks like I got some metadata down here, and so metadata. And this is a description, so I'm going to break this out. I don't have any cross references in. I like to have some little cross references in. Related. It's related to the thing we just came from. Grow food. And so we're not going to self-reference here. Grow food. See. And hard times there. Okay, so what we're doing is we're clustering ideas and concepts in order to build new content relevant to what we know about the previous content. We know from a headline test that people are concerned about their government's impact on their private property. And through the private property, there are limitations on being able to maybe hunt on their own land, to grow their own food, to raise their own animals, to have their own independence. And so in the context of the website, which is Prosperity Homestead, we're now developing content, but reading the minds of our viewers. So as the subscribers come in and they click on different content, I'm able to now understand what their interests are because I'm testing these headlines. I'm testing what content they visit or not. And then when I get letters like this. So here's an example. Somebody's written me a letter, which I store in my database. So let's see here. This is a keyword phrase. Actually, let me just do one better. Let's go to the article itself. So I go to the website and I say grow food. And I say, okay, here's something interesting. Growing your food on slopes. I did a podcast about growing your food on slopes. Is this? Yeah, this is a landing page. So I can say, okay, well, growing your food on slopes, walking paths and growing your food. Do you have the right? This is the article, by the way, that the headline test was done on. And we'll do real quick before I transition here. You can see I embedded somebody else's content. And how do we represent that in the LinkedIn and the Obsidian? Let's clean this up a little bit here. Now, by the way, this platform is so flexible, it lets you do this kind of jumping around type of thing, which is not necessarily productive. But I just want to give you the practical demonstration of how useful this type of tool is. Because what we're doing is we're doing ideation. We're taking something we learned, a certain headline is better than another headline. And I can see how the headline about government right here, what the government is changing is very appropriate for engagement because see here, look at this. These are politicians right down here. I can see some keyword opportunities for cross-linking. We'll worry about that some other time. But here's the original article. So we'll open it in a new tab. And I'm constantly reformatting, which is a very flexible opportunity here. But again, I imported this original article is written in 2020. And so I've imported it into my Obsidian platform. And since I know it's a published article, let me just update my status here. And it's really that easy. Now, tags. Okay, right to grow food. Do I need to reproduce the tags? No, I can just come over here and copy and paste them. So again, I want to give you some behind the scenes here of how flexible this kind of note-taking platform can be, whether I was doing this in plain text files or not, because again, the concept of structure lets me do a search here is just as easy as I could do a search in Obsidian. Okay, so this is VS Code. It's a popular coding platform. Any kind of coding development environment can read Markdown text. VS Code just happens to recognize Markdown. Here's the article that we see over here. Here is the headline test. Okay, so here's the notation for embedding, which I have changed that. So embed, and this notation isn't really, it's not like Markdown or anything. I could use Markdown so that embed comes out. I could do that so that the embed happens the same. And then I do notice that there, see this little subhead down there? I do notice that needs to be italicized. And I like to, if it's the caption, just put it on the end here so that when I do a preview, it comes out the way I want it to go. Do you see how important this is? So as far as productivity is concerned, like see, I see split lines here. You can see how there's a split from the import. So I'm going to highlight everything, and then I'm going to merge. Again, can you see how as a writer, as an editor, as a publisher, you can extremely fast get your content together, not only developing ideas, but implementing what we learn about our content that is published, because ultimately the publishing is the most important part. Now, part of my headline capture was, again, capturing the testing, and I'll show you why it's coded that way. But right here, we're going to now choose the winner in our platform, because again, I'm migrating off the platform. I haven't had a chance to, this hasn't gotten enough impressions to auto select, and I'm going to use a new testing tool, but I'm going to set my winner. Okay, it's going to take a little bit of time. So while that's working, I'm going to go back here to Obsidian. I noticed I didn't like the title of this. I've been changing the format of some of this stuff. So we've got your property rights. Now, if your settings are correct, it's going to update all the cross references. Now, I think these are related, so I'm going to come over here and say, see your property rights. See how it referenced the one I had open recently? A little bit. Oh, there you go, right there. And then I'm just going to cut and paste, because all it is text over here where I'm captured the headlines. And that's there. So while something's running in the background, I'm over here checking a few other things. Boom, captured that as well. So all those articles are related. Okay, well, it's still running. Maybe I want to go see something else. I got my cluster mentioned up. This particular article is metadata. Can you see how fast this goes? Nobody's mentioned in the metadata. I need to be over here and grow your own food, headline. I need to mention the metadata. Your property rights ends in 28. There you go. And now we're back here. We got at least one reference to it. Do you see how everything dynamically updates? The dynamic update is so powerful because it helps you stay in sync. Now, if this is still going back here, let me just let that run by itself, and I'll show you one other thing. So we've got all this metadata up front here. This front matter is actually a database. And what this gives me the opportunity to do is, in this one we're doing right now, we're proofing it. What it gives me the opportunity to do is something extremely powerful. And I'm going to go ahead and close these windows up because they don't need to be open. I'm going to go over here to another function. And some of these things are plugins, is a database. If I'm going through my testing and I want to see what kind of testing's been going on, the inventory of testing, what kind of campaigns are in progress, I'm going to click this little testing thing over here, and this plugin gives me an inventory of the testing in progress. So this right here, Grow Your Own Food, is what we're working on. The platform that we did the testing was WordPress. Okay. I don't have my UTM codes. My catalog code's not there. The catalog code for this one, let's go ahead and pull that back up. How do I do it this way? It's easier because it's a recently added right here. I've got that. I'm going to show you something pretty interesting here. My catalog code is just the last digits here, like that add code. So let me get that in place. And then over here, my UTM source is typically a lowercase version of this. Hit return. And then the campaign is typically a lowercase version of the same thing here. So these are UTM sources and campaigns, so that if I were to test these headlines in social media, I can reference them appropriately. Let me open this document in the right here. And now you see, look, in the headers and the UTM codes, it's all automatically updated. Now, if you want to do a consultation about your productivity and your editorial system, whether you're a copywriter, a publisher, or you're writing a book or something, we can discuss the nuances of the plugins. One of the challenges about the plugins, and just to give you a quick look, one of the challenges of the plugins, and you can see the ones I have down here, is they're not right for everybody. Some of the plugins take up a tremendous amount of horsepower, like for example, the plugins associated with machine learning, and so I have to turn some of these things off from time to time. There are plugins that will not be very consistent. So this plugin, for example, is showing me all tags, not just focused to the article, while these links give me specifics to the article itself. What we're able to do here, folks, is to very quickly edit materials, look at the materials in different formats, and ultimately start focusing on getting actual work done. The key thing is getting the work done. All the editing and changing in content has no value if it is not producing some kind of output. So this last part of output is to select the winner. So see if this goes a little faster, folks. Okay, there it goes. So we picked the winner. Now when I refresh the page, you can see what the government is changing about property rights, and then it goes into this content that is specific to the needs of the visitor. What we've been able to do now, of course, is we've captured everything we know about this particular article in Obsidian. I don't need to go find stuff because I can search for a key term. And there's a couple search tools. It doesn't, there's different ways of looking at it, but I can find the original article. I can make sure the original article has appropriate metadata. So permalink is the main URL, or the canonical, I think it is. I have that in there. Now when I'm publishing additional content on the same topic, or I'm expanding the topic to write a special report, or I'm creating a map of content to write an article about this material, I don't have to do a whole lot. And in fact, I had mentioned earlier, I saw a contextual reference that was relevant. I can even put my contextual content in here so that I can start building additional profiles and materials. I can notice things like this. See that escape right there? And I can make corrections on those types of materials. So let me real quick show you, before we wrap up this session, show you in VS Code the committing to GitHub. Okay, so I've made these changes. So I've accepted new headline post test. Okay, that's the description. My descriptions are quite random, but they tend to describe what it is that we're doing here. And yes, I know I'm jumping back and forth, but when you get in the groove and you're editing, you don't want to be thinking about other tools. You want to be opening other tools. You want to be able to, in between thoughts, upload the materials, commit it to the database, upload the materials. I still have in my copy and paste ledger the item I want to change, so I can drop that over here and let it go ahead and find that change in the database. I can come over here and show you that change. Projects, there you go, accept new headline post test. I can see all the changes associated with it, the new content created, okay? And now there's no questions. I can give my assistant access to this repository, by the way, if they're going to go publish code out of this. I tend not to, because this is a gig and a half of records. I'd rather go and post them individually or put them in a folder, attach them to an email. But I found a problem in my system, and I want to recursively change that issue everywhere. I can do so in the VS Code without messing up Obsidian. Now, I do want to make sure I closed everything in Obsidian, because I don't like to have, just because of my brain, the way it works, I don't like to have my file open in two places at once, because it can cause problems. But I basically made the change. I did change all. 88 occurrences will be replaced. Okay. I'm going to let it relax a little bit, let it save it to disk. I'm going to let it do what it needs to do. And now it's popped up and says there were 76 files modified. Fixed format escape of dash. What is that? Tick. That's a tick. That's a hyphen. No, what is that? Apostrophe. We'll just say tick. Now I hit commit. Now this is going to commit it on my local machine. Now, if you guys have developed code before, this isn't anything new. As far as being a writer, this is more like FrameMaker or some of the really expensive professional publishing platforms. But once I've committed my changes, they go out to the Obsidian database here. I call it a database. It's a vault. But it goes out here to my GitHub, and I can see fixed format escape of tick, and I can see all my changes. So I can see where the changes were made. I can know the work was done. It's all in one place. It's all in one note-taking tool. It makes the corrections that need to be corrected. See right there. I've been able to do it without stomping on my work. I've been able to do formatting. I've been able to do cross-references and associations. I've been able to build out graphs and mind maps so that I can come up with new ideas and concepts to help write content faster. I've been able to go through here and ad hoc change text. Like here's my old change tracking. So my new change tracking is HubSpot. I'm sorry, GitHub. So this is my new change tracking, which is very industry friendly. My old change tracking doesn't need to be there anymore, because again, we're about publishing. We're not about monitoring. And then I can put in, like I've done to the other ones, related. And I can cross-reference the headline, because the headline test is directly associated with the content we just showed you. And grow your own food. And we can attach other related articles. We're not attaching it as much as we're just building out a cross-reference. Look how powerful it is. See what we've done, the little map here. And just because it makes people excited, I'll go ahead and show you the entire database. But it's going to run slow, so I'll probably stop it a little bit. But the entire map of content is not as useful anymore. The entire map of content doesn't add value as much anymore because it's so big. But that narrow scope, actually, I'm going to stop this running because I don't think we need to burn the CPU. I'm going to instead show you the map of content for establish instant credibility. We have to find it really quick. Let's use a different search tool here. Establish instant. Actually, credibility MOC is probably a better search. All right, credible leader. Let's just show, I'll just show you this one real quick. So this is related to becoming a recognized expert, becoming a recognized authority. It's the same book, but it's an evolved version of the material I used for the book. And you can see the map of content is basically an outline. Maybe you can't see that. So I'll come over here and I'll show you. There's the outline. See, what are the benefits of credibility? How do you get high credibility? How long does credibility take? And now I'm referencing back into content. As you can see, the map, this map is way more valuable than the large map. And so I've gone from functionally testing headlines on a website of material that was previously published to capturing the results of the test to writing additional headlines I should test later based on a cluster of content, which is related materials. I've been able to update the original article for changes that needed to be in the article, formatting, things like that. I've been able to check this into a repository so that my work is saved. Not only does Obsidian save the work automatically, but I'm now able to push it off my platform into the cloud so that it's saved out there as well. That's great for collaboration. I'm able to have maps of content that are dynamically produced, meaning that I can just, oh, wow, this is related to credibility. I'm going to go ahead and put this in a map of content related to questions. What about quotes, for example? What quotes are related to credibility? I'm real flexible on my formatting. I can even then start building additional associations of authors, for example. I can leave myself notes for later. Detail right here, and that's a notation I do for myself. I could put a task in here if I needed to. I can build out additional questions and store them somewhere. See, here's another people association. I can set up, here you go, there's the report for establishing instant credibility. I can come in here and really quickly see my larger scope of work, my entire testing inventory, if I'm working through testing. Now, there are some drawbacks. You can wander off into doing other things that have nothing to do with the main task. That's why I push the importance of the main task. But I have coding so that I can find associated content. I have tags. I have the world at my fingertips. I have a productivity engine here that takes what I'm doing to the next level and allows me to capture ideas and to put them someplace of value, allows me to multitask, to do multiple things at once, to drill down into content and materials. You can see I tried to delete the first one and it didn't go. I can maintain the repository. I can use other tools I'm familiar with that have coding in them, for example. So those changes I made with the untitled documents, I'm ignoring untitled documents. I don't send untitled documents to GitHub. GitHub allows me to work from multiple machines. Now, the reason we didn't go into plugins and stuff for Obsidian is because different machines have different plugins depending on the horsepower of the machine or what I'm trying to do with it. And then all the Linux platforms, because this is Windows, for example, I also do editing on Linux. The Linux platforms have access to Juniper Hub, Jupyter Hub, as well as Python and stuff that I use for topic analysis and machine learning. You don't have to be this complex. You can start with the basics. And I hope this has given you some practical implementation. Please ask your questions below, because I had made a comment on a message board about some of the uselessness of many of these Obsidian or note-taking related productivity videos. And so I wanted to show you something that was practical implementation that drove down into actual output. Because learning how to be more productive is not being more productive. It feels like it. It kicks off the dopamines. But when you sit down and go through an editing session like that, if I wasn't talking to you, that would have been a 15-minute editing session that is basically foundational to the long-term productivity of me as a publisher. So whether you're writing a school paper, whether you're writing a blog or a newsletter, whether you're a copywriter with client assignments, whether you're a marketer or a business analyst or consultant, this environment that is portable to any platform I use is the foundation for my ability to write books, to write reports, to write deliverables for clients. And so when you use this material, you'll develop your own little approach, but all of this is second nature. And so I was able to burn through the content. Something gets delayed, I can go off and work on something else. I pop something into a keyword buffer or copy and paste buffer. I'm able to then roll through that pretty quick, and now you get results. So this tutorial has been about how to increase your productivity as a writer. If you want additional information on increasing your productivity as a writer, you want to visit www.adbriefing.co.uk. Some of my podcasts about how to become a productive copy editor, how to be a productive writer. And then again, I think I'm going to put this particular video in my behind the scenes tutorial where we talk about kind of what else we're doing. How are we storing files? How are we saving stuff on the disk? How are we collaborating with other people? So if you're interested in that, be sure to get out to the website, Ad Briefing Copywriting Tips. I'm Justin Hitt. I am a publisher, author, business analyst. I create volumes of content for my clients, and my client material is not in this Obsidian repository that has 24,000 files. And in the last couple months, it's 2,200 changes. It is the result of productivity. It is a result of implementing productivity. So again, if you have any questions, you can visit me at any of these websites I've mentioned. The main site that shows all the content we produce every week. Of course, this content has testing. This content has, analytics associated with it. It has graphics and images. All of that is in our Obsidian platform, as well as a few other physical places. Visit me at www.jwhco.com, and then you can just simply go to the contact page to ask your questions. I'm here to help you be more productive, to have greater success in the work that you do, to create results that are measurable. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.